So thank you very much for joining us. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So in today's objectives, I want to help gain insight into the sleep industry, because many people, we might be familiar with other spaces or industries, but many people, before you've kind of hopped on in here, you don't really understand the magnitude and how big and growing the sleep industry is from a professional standpoint. I would like to give a little background of my journey and how I kind of stumbled into this industry and my experience with it. And I also want to give you clarity on how you can capitalize on this and how you can get involved, because we're all here to discuss and to learn, but I want to make this very practical for everyone here to think about how they can really improve their skills and their market share of this growing and expanding and much needed industry. And like I said, feel free to stop me with any questions or thoughts along the way. I would love to hear your perspective as well. Okay, so let's talk about the who of the sleep industry, and I will predominantly focus my discussion on the US population. But, as we heard from some of our participants, we have people from other countries over here, people who work in other countries, and you can extrapolate these numbers to your own national and international population, because especially with our world of digital technology, the boundaries have lowered. I work with clients all over the world, and you have the opportunity to do the same. But just to focus on the US population, out of about 260 million adults in the US, 65 million adults snore regularly. 46 million people are using sleeping pills every single night. 104 million are reported to be chronically sleep deprived, and 164 million adults, that is the majority of the US adult population, struggle with sleep at least on a weekly basis. Okay, so I just want you to kind of absorb the shock value of those numbers, because many people, haven't really contemplated how big the sleep problem is. So when you look around, when you go to work, when you think about your own family or your classroom or wherever you are, you don't have to look far to find people who have sleep issues. The majority of people around you, at least one night a week, struggle with sleep. These numbers are at an epic proportion, and they're only growing. They're only getting worse. The sleep industry is blowing up because of it. And I'll share with you another very interesting statistic to keep in mind. Sleep deprivation cost the US economy $400 billion in 2022. That means from lost production time, calling in sick, all the other health-related issues that came with sleep deprivation, the US economy spent $400 billion dealing with this issue. So when we get into some of the solutions to the sleep problem, recognize that, the title is the $52 billion sleep industry. That is not trying to fix something. That is an investment that people and companies are willing to make to be able to help solve a much bigger issue that's costing the US economy this year $400 billion and growing. And keep in mind that number on an international scale is exponentially higher and growing. So when we come with solutions to this problem, this is everyone's issue. That means if you're the principal of a school, think about how much productivity you're losing when your teachers and your students are having sleep issues. If you're running a company with 10,000 employees, how much revenue are you losing every month because of sleep deprivation? And so in every space, from the top down, both the people who are struggling with sleep as well as the ripple effects that that's having on the economy, the sleep industry is really blowing up. And because of this massive factor at play, it's on the table. People genuinely care about it and want to be able to solve this issue. What's driving this? I mean, how did we take something which is inherently the most natural, effortless process and then create a society of people who chronically have sleep issues that now we need to fix? So I think there's a lot of reasons and factors. I will share 4 basic ones. Number 1, increased stress and work hours. As much as our society has gotten easier with all of our technology, the fact that we're getting the digital simulation of tragedy and war and crisis all over the world. I think we had a big uptick in this when COVID happened. And not only was it the epidemic that was so catastrophic for people, but people were constantly checking the news, constantly on social media, constantly watching the numbers of how many millions of infections of people around them. And that increased stress wreaks havoc on sleep. And work hours as well. This is something we also saw in the post-COVID uptick. On one hand, people kind of viewed working from home and working remotely as a blessing. They didn't have to get dressed up. They didn't have to commute into work. But at the same time, they don't really have defined work hours anymore. People were working in their bedroom late at night now more than ever before. And the boundaries had become blurred. And their bosses expected them to, be responsive at all hours of the night. So this was a big factor that we saw. Sometimes people who were the most successful, the most driven, the most entrepreneurial really got caught in this cycle that they were chronically sleep deprived, running after their own success. The technology use, certainly we see this, especially amongst the younger population, teenagers and millennials, but even amongst an older population as well, where even if it's not stress or work, but they're just addicted to their phones. We live in almost it's common amongst our society that smartphones are highly addictive substances, and many people are not able to be able to put them down and create firm, real boundaries. And this itself is wreaking havoc on our sleep. I believe that obesity and poor health, I think obesity, especially in the realms of apnea and snoring, is a driving factor. And poor health in general leads to a poor night's sleep. I think those two of them are inextricably linked. As well as, and this is number 4, I think if it was worth coming today just to learn about this, I think it was worth it, to understand that up to now, I personally believe, as someone who's been in this industry for a number of years, sleep issues are mismanaged by the establishment. That means that up to now, when people had sleep issues, the way that they were dealt with in the traditional mental health and physical health systems of our society were mismanaged, and people were not getting the results they were looking for. And I clearly think, just going back up a slide, when we see these numbers of, despite the fact of all of our technology and all of the apps and all of the sleeping pills, which we're going to discover in a second, we still have this issue at an epic proportion. Something tells me that the way that our society tries to fix sleep issues is just not working well enough. And this point number 4, I think, is we're really going to dive in and understand what could be a better solution to the epic sleep deprivation that we're experiencing on a global level. Feel free to stop me at any point. I would love to hear your perspective on this, okay? So when we think about the $52 billion sleep industry, which is just an estimate, I'll go over some of the numbers soon, what does that include? What does it look like in this huge industry that's constantly growing? How are people investing their time in to be able to fix this? So number 1, sleeping pills and supplements, huge. Again, we saw that statistic, 46 million Americans are using either sleeping pills or over-the-counter supplements to sleep every night. And that's in addition to the people that are taking them on an occasional basis. This is a huge industry. And to think about where the dollars and cents are, the sleeping pill companies are not incentivized to get people off of sleeping pills. They're incentivized to keep people writing those prescriptions every month, keeping those doctors writing those prescriptions every month. The supplement company as well. They want to put out more supplements to be able to make more of a profit. This is a huge lion's share of the industry. In addition to that, we have doctors, sleep clinics, therapists, and sleep coaches, which is the space that I'm in. We have the pillows and the mattresses and, now the smart mattresses and the very fancy sheets and the mattresses that sync with your app and the temperature. This is an emerging market for people looking for a better night's sleep. You have the apps and the technology to be able to, you have the mental health, the Calm, the Serenity, the Headspace. You have specific, you have sleep tracker apps. You have better sleep apps. You have apnea apps, snoring apps. There's a huge world in this, and other devices as well as the CPAP machine. Just to clarify a few terms, I know not everyone's familiar. Sleep snoring is where you have a constriction of the airways, and the air passing in and out will then cause friction, which sounds, if you ever heard someone snoring, right, they sound like, they're making noise. Apnea is actually the complete closing of the airways. So you have a person who literally is strangling themselves throughout the night. Their soft tissue palate is falling upon itself. They go into a state of hypoxia, their oxygen goes down. Your body will then shoot adrenaline to wake them up out of this oxygen deprivation. They then wake up, gasp, and then go back to sleep. And for some people, this happens 30, 40, 50 times an hour. That's called severe sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a silent killer. The vast majority of sleep apnea cases are undiagnosed. I mean, the majority of people who have sleep apnea don't even know it. And the traditional solution to sleep apnea is something called a CPAP machine. It's a continuous positive airway pressure machine, which is a mask that someone wears either over their nose or over nose and mouth. And it has a machine that can detect when there's no airflow in and out, and it will force air into the lungs to be able to keep that oxygen level high. And this, in my experience, there are definitely other points, but this is the majority of the products in the sleep industry. Let's dive in with some of the details. So here, this is a infographic from Penn Medicine. Estimated 50 to 70 million Americans suffer from sleep disorders or sleep deprivation. Again, we saw our numbers higher, but you can see that whatever way you cut it, whether it's 100 million or 70 million, this is an epic issue. It is estimated that Americans spend more than $41 billion on sleep aids and remedies. So putting aside the app, putting aside the mattresses, putting out the CPAP machines, $41 billion just on sleep aids. And more than 60 million Americans take sleep medication every year. And in my personal perspective, going back to that mismanagement, sleep medication is very rarely the long-term solution to people's sleep issues. Okay, this is the sleep aids market. You can see here projected, again, the numbers there's some variation, but we're talking in the billions and we're talking huge. 2020 sleep aids were at $78 billion. 2023 projected to 81. And you can just see over the next 10 years, this is projected to go up to $131 billion. This is in the US alone, of the amount of money that people were spending on sleep aids. Here, this is a graph about the sleep apnea devices. We spoke about the CPAP machine and other devices. Here, this is in terms of diagnostic as well as the therapeutic model. 2022, last year, it was at $8.1 billion for these breathing machines. 2022, it'll continue to climb, and we're looking at numbers continue to go up, almost doubling over the next 10 years as these issues continue to grow. And so you could just see from yourself what a huge mammoth, massive market we're talking about. Okay, that was a little bit about general sleep industry questions and sleep industry details. Does anyone have any questions on anything I set up to now? Not yet? That's totally fine. I'm happy to save the questions at the end, and feel free to interrupt me. So I promised that I'd share a little bit about how I got into this industry. Like, how did I end up as the founder of the Sleep Coach Academy and an integrative sleep coach? Where did I enter all this? So a little bit of background. I grew up in San Diego, California, in a town called La Jolla. If anyone's been there, it's a beautiful town. Here's a picture. I ended up declaring, I went to UCLA, declared a major in psychobiology. I was pre-med once upon a time, but kind of soon realized that I didn't want to do that. I ended up post-graduation moving to Israel, to Jerusalem, ended up studying for 8 years to become a rabbi. And this is me. You can see I was leading a group of college students on a trip to Israel. That's me over there. And I had a great run for that for 7 years. But that, working with young people in the Jewish community, that came to an end, like I said, after our 7-year cycle. And now this was me trying to figure out, what was I going to do? I mean, I had this background in psychobiology. I had this, experience being a rabbi and the training in that. But what was I going to do now to build a business? So what I didn't mention is along the road of my education here, I developed my own insomnia. I myself was hooked on sleeping pills. And to me, like I said, I went to doctors and I went to therapists and no one was able to help me. And if you've ever struggled with sleep, you know that it's the most challenging thing to deal with. You feel totally frustrated, exhausted, lost, lonely, desperate. And that was me. So I ended up not learning sleep out of a purely academic self. I ended up learning modalities that would help me. I was my first client. I ended up sleep training myself and ended up getting through it. Thank God to come off of sleeping pills. And then I was kind of thinking at this point, well, I had this background in sleep. Maybe I could actually get into this myself. So after exploring a number of models, I ended up opening up my own online sleep coaching practice and developing that both in terms of a business-wise as well as modalities over the next 3 years. And then when I kind of feel like I had figured this out, I had this down to a science, and my practice was busier than I wanted it to be. I didn't have any more room for any more clients in my practice. That's where I decided to go ahead and actually open up Academy to train others in a holistic sleep coaching model. That makes sense? So I'm going to go ahead and we'll continue to dive in. And I'd love to share kind of a more practical standpoint where this is where really you, whatever you're doing, whether you're looking for a new career or you're in a coaching space or a health space or a education space, whatever space you're in, you can kind of think about your own path of how could you capitalize on this massive multi-billion-dollar industry. So whenever you're looking to break in, and I think everything that we're going to share over here applies to the sleep industry as well as it applies to any industry that you want to break in, I really think you need these three, what I call these kind of golden nuggets to be able to think about. Number one is there has to be a market. Whatever industry you go into, it can't be three people. There has to be a large market of people that you can be able to serve. And I think we've proven up to now, the sleep market is not going away anytime soon. You know, oftentimes when I'm dealing with my sleep coaches, they're like, oh, you know, could I get clients? Are there enough clients for me? I'm like, you know, we could put out 1,000 more sleep coaches, and I don't believe we'd even be touching the tip of the iceberg in all the people that need comprehensive sleep solutions. So you want to make sure that there's a strong in-demand market that needs your services. You want to be passionate about it. And I personally believe this is a key ingredient of any business that you go into. There has to be passion. When I first was developing my business model, I actually had the plan of doing marketing. John will get a kick out of this, doing marketing for orthodontic firms, right? I was going to be the marketing expert for orthodontists. And I was like developing algorithms and patterns and marketing strategies and all of this. And I woke up one day and be like, I actually don't want to do this at all. This sounds so boring to me. I would actually hate doing this. This is not who I want to be. And at that point, I had to redefine myself and say, you know, sleep is actually something that I'm much more passionate about, and I would be much more proud and excited to wake up every day. So I do believe that whatever industry you break into, you're trying to innovate, you want to have that passion. You want to have something that resonates with you, that you're excited about, and you really feel is a good fit for you. Once you have these two parts, there's a market out there. We know sleep, there's a market. You have a passion of helping people, getting involved in innovating that space. The last point that you need is a unique niche. Because the last thing that you want to be is the person that's giving the same generic information as everybody else. And I've seen this time and time again, that, you know, there's the, I'll tell you a story. I was in the doctor's office probably a few months ago, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and you know, they have those like medical like TV tickers like on the wall. And I was out of the corner of my eye, I was watching it, and it said, oh, sleep tips. I'm like, oh, perfect. This is going to be great for me. So I watched, what are they going to say? It said, number one, you know, go ahead and, you know, turn off your phones before bed. Number two, don't drink caffeine, you know, after 12 o'clock. Number three, if you can't fall asleep, speak to your doctor about sleeping pills. I was like, oh my gosh, like that should be criminal. That should be negligent. I can't believe they just said that. But, you know, who's funding the TV show? You know, it's the sleeping pill company. So you don't want to be the person that's telling everyone to, you know, turn your phone off at 10 o'clock. Again, that's part of it. But you have to be able to find a very tight niche within any industry you're going at and start speaking differently, start innovating, start speaking uniquely, and have a creative voice that stands out from the crowd in whatever space that you go into. I want to get into the typical treatment options, right? To kind of see what does it look like when people go through sleep issues. So, if they do have sleep issues and they go to either their GP or they go to a sleep specialist or even a sleep therapist, traditionally they're given cookie cutter sleep hygiene. Turn your phone off, no caffeine, no heavy food, relax before bed, the typical things that we're given. And they're given something called CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which involves relaxation, it involves sleep restriction, it involves a sleep log, a number of other things. This works for some people, but it doesn't work for a lot of people. And it's very important to recognize, and this is where I said that sleep issues are being mismanaged. This is not the comprehensive solution. And in as much as you will read articles and hear from experts that this is considered the gold standard, I myself, after working with hundreds of clients around the world, do not believe this to be true. And I believe not just myself, a lot of the innovators in this space, Dr. Daniel Erickson in Oregon, Dr. Guy Meadows in London, who are both sleep doctors, also believe and are pioneering the industry that there is more to sleep solutions than what's traditionally being given. Many times the doctors, even sleep doctors, are given sleeping pills or other medication. I'll tell you about a 46-year-old client of mine that I'm working with right now. He's an attorney in New Jersey, and he went to his doctor and they put him on sleeping medication. And the doctor told him, there's nothing else that we can do. And I'll get into some more details of that fellow in a second. Or people are given CPAP machines. Remember I spoke about that machine that keeps their airways open while they're breathing? What I didn't tell you was, for every person that's given a CPAP machine, only less than 50% of people are actually compliant within 6 months. That means the majority of people who need the CPAP machine and are given it by a doctor cannot sleep with it. They cannot tolerate the feeling and the pressure of this machine on their mouth, and therefore their issue goes unresolved. So these typical treatments work for some people, but there's a huge gaping hole in other people that they don't work for. Oh, this is the doctor's office TV I told you about, right? Avoid screens at bedtime, have a consistent bedtime routine, and then speak to your doctor about sleeping pills. People who want to innovate the industry need to do more than this. Okay, this was the 46-year-old client I was telling you about. He had sleep issues since he was a teenager, high levels of snoring. He went from his GP to his sleep doctor, and the doctor told him, this is what his sleep expert told him. Yep, some people just need Ambien. Don't ask questions, just take it for the rest of your life. And he couldn't swallow that pill, no pun intended. He believed that that was not true. And he's come to me, and thank God he's now coming off of sleeping pills entirely and sleeping naturally, because he didn't buy that line or that narrative. And I'm not saying this is what every sleep doctor is going to do, but these are people that I deal with in my practice all the time, people that I believe were failed by a myopic system that put them in a box, put them on a regimen, and just kind of forgot about it and said, this is all we can do for you. And I always believe people have options beyond what they're given, especially when it comes to prescription medication. I'll tell you about another student of mine, another client of mine. His name is Judah, 22-year-old student from New York. Also had sleep issues since he was a teenager. He went to years of therapy, and this is where it gets interesting. The therapy, after years of talk therapy, was minimally effective. He was on medications which didn't work, and he wants to move on in life. He doesn't want to be stuck in this cycle of fear and panic and sleeplessness and insomnia. He needed solutions, and thank God we worked together for a few months, and he is much better now. Here's another example client of mine. This is Rebecca, 42-year-old mother from Florida. She couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Also went through years of therapy, minimally effective. None of anything that her therapist told her lasted. And her doctors didn't think there was anything wrong with her. People just thought she was lazy and couldn't get out of bed in the morning. We worked together for a few months. We approached it from a holistic standpoint, and thank God she is also doing a lot better. This is really where I've kind of come into the space. Has anyone ever seen it was a movie, I think, The Emperor's New Clothes, where there was a fellow, there was a king who hired a tailor to make him clothing, and the tailor made him this invisible clothing, and he told him, oh no, so it was beautiful clothing, everyone can see it, just go out in public. And the king was walking around in his underwear, and all the subjects were told, don't tell the king what the real is, just, oh, beautiful, your highness, beautiful clothing, until this little kid came on. He's like, no, the king's naked, and he wouldn't walk the party lines. I feel oftentimes like that's me. I come onto this industry with a kind of just unique and genuine and like, hey, fresh perspective. Maybe this multi-billion-dollar industry, and these people with all sorts of letters after their names actually might not be doing the best thing for the client. And maybe we could even do better. What would happen if we offered collateral holistic healing? What if we would offer solutions to people that were customized, not cookie cutter? We weren't having people read books that had 6-week programs or putting people on apps that had generic, kind of sleep advice. What would happen if we could genuinely customize people's solutions? What would happen if we weren't treating the symptoms of sleeplessness with sleeping pills, but we were treating the root underlying cause of where their sleep issues came from? What would happen if we would deal with the whole body and mind as a complete system, as opposed to giving people a label, you have chronic insomnia, and dealing with the diagnosis, not the whole person? And so these are the kind of questions that I was getting the industry I was asking, and we started really changing the shape of sleep coaching with a holistic approach, one that combined looking at the body, the mind, and breathing all at once, and not only focusing, as some people do, on this issue or that issue or the other issue, but taking a look at the whole person, realizing that sleep is not the issue. We don't treat sleep, we treat people. And I will go ahead and dive in to each one of these details now that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So when it comes to the mind of sleep, how could we combine conscious mind shifts, things that are dealt with, like things like CBT, mindset, affirmations, in addition to behavioral changes that go into a good night's sleep, in addition to subconscious changes? I ended up studying, Gregory is one of my mentors, as well as other modalities that I've learned in terms of hypnosis, and to think, how can we recondition the subconscious mind to be able to get on board with the sleep process, to be able to stop nightmares, to be able to stop chronic exhaustion, to be able to understand how the subconscious mind interacts with all of these things. And that's something that's very unique in the sleep field, as I believe not a lot of people are focusing on. But in my perspective, this is the number one thing that needs to be emphasized. Tim, I would love to hear your question.
Yeah, maybe if you could address that hypnosis a little bit more there, because I know for some folks, myself, our minds go certain places. The high school grad night where they hypnotize the person and they can't control themselves and whatnot. So kind of expand on that a little bit. What is and isn't hypnosis in this context?
Sure, great question. Yeah, I never thought of myself as someone who would get into hypnosis. When I was at those, events with the hypnotist on the stage, I was the kind of guy who would refuse to get up there. I didn't want to lose my faculties and make myself a fool in front of a crowd. It wasn't until I started really applying the more traditional modalities, if anyone's familiar with psychological terms, CBT, ACT, and ERP, which I view when I teach are actually all part of a spectrum, from the cognitive behavioral therapy model, acceptance and commitment therapy model, and the exposure and response prevention. Those are all conscious modalities. And while they all work and they're all evidence-based, I felt that there was something missing. And to kind of put it in very specific terms. Sapori, you had a question there?
Hi, Anna. This is for David.
Okay, well, if she has a question, I'd love to have it. If you kind of put the mind in succinct terms, so on one hand, you have the conscious mind, and the other hand, you have the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind is the active thinking analytical process, but beneath that, the kind of root of the iceberg of our mind is the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind works very differently. It runs in very different rules of operation to the conscious mind. And let's say, for example, in my personal experience, all mental health struggle exists between a gap, a rift between the conscious and the subconscious mind. So let's say you have a person who's anxious, okay? Anxiety is also epidemic in our society. So what happens? A person's conscious mind says, calm down, chill out, you're okay, you're safe. What are you having a panic attack for? This is not real, this is not normal. But the subconscious mind doesn't know that. It can't process those logical words. So the subconscious mind keeps the person catastrophizing, keeps the person panicking, keeps the person in a state of fear and dread. And they hate themselves because of it, because they want to pull out of this. They know that they're not supposed to be anxious, but the subconscious mind, the harder they try to criticize the mind, the subconscious mind gets stuck in these patterns. And the same is with OCD, and the same is with depression. It's always a gap between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And to affect real change, and I'm a big believer in this, both firsthand as well as the clients that I work with, you have to be able to get both of those parts of the mind on the same page. And so what we do in hypnosis, it's nothing more than quieting the conscious mind and speaking directly to the subconscious mind in a language that it understands, in a style that it understands, to get these two parts of the mind working together. Because when you do, this is where great mental health happens. And so while there is a truthful element to stage hypnosis, and it's very entertaining, and I believe it's real, as I've studied it myself, it's not what therapeutic hypnosis does. When we're doing therapeutic hypnosis, the client, it's not for entertainment purposes, it's for their best interest. They're also in control of the situation the entire time. They're able to easily come in and out of hypnosis. They remember the entire hypnotic experience. We're having a conversation with them just like we're having with you now. And I found that it's just this uber powerful tool to be able to go into not just teaching them coping mechanisms, but to go into rewrite the narrative of the subconscious mind. Does anybody here have any computer programming background? Computer scientists or anybody? John's got a little bit. So if you would imagine you have a computer problem. So, imagine these error messages come up. So you could say, well, I have these error messages on my computer. I'm just going to put up Post-it notes on my screen so I can stop seeing them, or, get a magic marker and start, writing on my screen. A real computer programmer would realize, well, that's not the solution. You have to go into the hard drive of the computer. If your computer is malfunctioning, you have to go in and look at the code on the hard drive and see where is that malfunction coming from, rewrite that code, and then your computer works great. And I find it a similar model when it comes to mental health. If we really want to be effective, it's not about teaching people how to handle their thoughts or how to have coping mechanisms. You need to be able to go in and rewrite the narrative,
Hi, it's
the
Davina.
coding of the subconscious mind.
Hey, how you doing? Really sorry about that.
No worries. How are you today?
Okay, got a lot of questions there. Tim, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. The big thing to me was just them still remembering it and having control. I'm not too familiar with the therapy version of hypnosis, so that's important to me. So appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, and then oftentimes I do give clients a little pep talk, going in of dispel of their myths, and sometimes we'll go in slowly and we'll come out. But I find for everyone that I've worked with, it's a very healing and it's a very gentle and an effective process to be able to go through. Amazing. Okay, let's keep diving in, because this is these are really amazing things. So we spoke about the holistic approach to the mind, putting conscious, subconscious, and behavior all together. What about a holistic approach to the body? I'll tell you a personal experience of mine. And this was something, I grew up in a very Western linear system of medicine. I went to UCLA, like I said, studied psychobiology. My father was a doctor. When I was in my late teens, I developed severe psoriasis on my hands. My hands were constantly bleeding, scratchy, itchy. If anyone's dealt with psoriasis, it's also a big pain. And I kept going to the people that I thought were going to have the solutions to my skin disease. And those were dermatologists, because I had a skin problem, didn't I? So I went to dermatologist after dermatologist, people, lots of letters after their names and lots of experience, and they kept diagnosing and prescribing. You have acute, chronic, psoriasis, eczema, whatever they want to call it. We need this steroid cream, this treatment, this pill, this, and it kept going up and down and up and down and up and down. And I kept saying, why is my skin doing this? They said, sir, there's no known cause to psoriasis. We just have to treat the symptoms. I got told that for years and suffered for years because of it. It was only when I entered the world of functional medicine, to people that take a look at holistic human health, that someone said, Daron, maybe you're actually asking the wrong question. Maybe stop to ask how to cure the rash on your hands and start asking why your body is in a state of inflammation that's coming out in your skin to begin with. That question literally changed my mind and life. because within a few months, my psoriasis went away, never needing a steroid cream again. And I was now open, firsthand experience to what functional medicine is. That doesn't mean I view that functional medicine is always the answer to everything. I am very much a holistic approach. I like collaborating with doctors and traditional medical approaches and everything. But when it comes to healing the body from the ground up, I'm a big believer that that starts with food. I'll tell you about another client of mine who was a 26-year-old female who had terrible hormone irregularities. She was not on a normal menstrual cycle and crazy ups and downs and spikes, and her hormones were all over the place. She ended up working with an endocrinologist for years, never getting better. He just had her on medication, which was kind of just suppressing her body's natural hormone production. And she came to me in tears that she had tired of her body doing this. We did a lot of things together. The number one thing we did, we modified her diet. She went from literally having hormones all over the place to perfectly balanced normal menstrual cycle, hormone cycle every month, because we changed her diet. And we did that in a customized way. And I'm a big believer that if you want to affect human health, it starts with taking a look at the food that we're putting into our body, stopping to put poison, which I was putting in my own body, food that was inflammatory to my system, and start to putting in food that is genuinely healing to your body. And I think we have ways to be able to deal with that. In addition to that, taking a look at the GI system, there's a big connection between gastrointestinal health as well as sleep. People are dealing oftentimes, let's say they're fighting a parasitic infection in their gut, that will shoot up cortisol in the middle of the night, because the nighttime is when their body goes into a state of rest and repair. So the body is now trying to quelch that parasitic infection, shooting up cortisol as an inflammatory response, and you wonder why they can't sleep. So as opposed to giving them a sleeping pill to sedate them and now getting them addicted to sleeping pills, why don't we deal with the whole person and the whole issue? And taking a look at the hormone production, certainly we see this amongst females, pre-menopause, post-menopause, in terms of progesterone, as well as just in general, cortisol, melatonin, overall hormone balance. When you get these three elements in line, and you get the body doing what it naturally knows how, miraculously, the sleep comes together. I'm not a medical doctor, and I don't treat people for specific diseases. But I find when we give them the tools for themselves to naturally rebalance their body, they end up sleeping a lot better. And the last thing I want to speak about is breathing. We spoke about those snoring and apnea situations and how majority of the cases are not helped with traditional treatment options. So I developed a holistic approach to how to get people to breathe better at night. Number one, that involves dealing with weight loss. Certainly the number one cofactor that we see with snoring and apnea is obesity. So to be able to, in a comprehensive way, get people down to their ideal body weight, to be able to train people's breathing mechanism, that they're not exacerbating their apnea and their snoring, as well as adjusting their posture and their tongue to open the body up, to be able to allow the body to optimize this breathing every night. And I know, we had one of our coaches that recently came into our program. He himself had terrible apnea and snoring. He put this together after his training, and he said it completely went away. So I believe that there's a lot of promise in putting, again, it's not one factor. It's taking a look at all of the factors that go into a good night's sleep and treating the whole person, body, mind, and soul. Before we dive in, is there any questions on anything I said up to now?
Wait, just to clarify on that last statement, you said he was struggling with apnea and he wasn't using the CPAP?
That's correct. Yeah, a lot of people, for whatever reason, cannot tolerate the sleep app, they can't sleep with it. They feel like they're suffocating with it. So I deal with people all the time that got prescribed a CPAP, but just can't use it. So, that's really where my mindset of coming up with alternative options came from.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I use the CPAP and I'm able to tolerate it, but I'm not going to say that I like it. Right. So,
I believe CPAPs save lives. I'm not anti-CPAP in the slightest. And if you have a CPAP and it's working, then great. But I do believe, at least in asking the question, why did our bodies get like this? Like if someone has apnea, question is why? I mean, the CPAP is a good Band-Aid on the situation. It says, well, we don't know why your body's doing this. Let's just force that air in the natural lungs, which, like I said, is critical. I'm not telling anyone to come off their CPAP, and if the doctor put you on it and you can tolerate it, then great. But I think many people that come to me are kind of asking the question, well, where is this apnea coming from? And are there holistic options to be able to retrain my body that I don't necessarily need to be dependent on this machine forever? And I think that's, it's certainly worth asking for people that, that deal with it. And many of my clients are multifactorial. Many of them have apnea and snoring, and they're on sleeping pills, and this, that, and their body's in a state of havoc. And oftentimes you have this where the sleep and the health feed into each other, where a person has poor health and therefore they have poor sleep. And the worse they're sleeping, then the more weight they gain and the more health they have, and the more, it keeps them stuck in this cycle. And the doctor says, well, let's just put you on, we'll put you on this medication and that medication and whatever. But that's not genuine health. Health is taking a look at helping the person get unstuck, both body and mind, and putting all of those pieces together, in my experience. And I think our clients really have seen those results. So I'll share with you just a little bit about what we are, so to say, bringing to the table, how we are innovating the space, and we're teaching others to get their share of that $52 billion industry and climbing. I've created something called the Sleep Coach Academy. It goes into two stages. Stage number one is we have the 10 high impact models that cover everything you need to build your sleep coaching business. We have weekly group training, community chat, expert guest speakers, as well as a personal capstone session and exam. This is to really giving over everything that you can go out there and learn all of that material and genuinely be able to help people. And then once you finish stage one, you actually graduate to stage two, where you continue to have that weekly support, that even when you're out there working with clients, you always have a community to be part of and to brainstorm and ask questions, as well as a dedicated marketing expert and technology that helps you grow from a business standpoint to go out there and get clients with ease, market, and excel in everything that you do. And it's a 12-month integrative sleep coaching certification program. And I think, just to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together, if people are interested in making a strong six-figure salary, like I said, you don't need tons of clients. If you're bringing in 10 clients a month, you're bringing in about, I would say, $25,000 to $30,000 a month income. And, we saw how big of a population this is. You don't need to change the world. You need one fraction of 1% of people that have sleep issues who are all around you. They're in your cities, they're in your communities, they're in your schools, and, your clients are really right there. It's a way to harness your creativity, passion, and uniqueness. I'm not training people to be little carbon copies of me. I'm training you to go out there and be you in your brilliance and your innovation and your success. I want people to have meaningful work that creates real impact. I want you to be the hero, because that was important for me. Going from working in the nonprofit, I wasn't just looking to make money. I wanted to help people as well as working your own hours from anywhere. Wherever you want to be, sleep coaching is needed, both remotely and in person. So I think it's a nice combination for a lot of people. If anyone is interested in more information, I'm happy to schedule just a call. Just reach out to me to see if this would be something that you would be interested in as a career, as a part-time career, as developing this skill in addition to your other practice, your other business. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat here on Zoom. This is my personal phone number, and this is as well as the, we'll share this as well. You can go on our website at sleepcoachacademy.org. And I would love to open the floor up now. I know I've spoken a lot. I don't like speaking this much, but I'd love to open up the floor to see if anybody else had any questions.
Wait, Doran, just to paraphrase and make sure that I've correctly, understood what you shared with us, is that it seems like, A, there's a lot of people that aren't sleeping. B, some of them can be helped by surface level interventions. Some people just need to not fiddle with their phones and they'll probably be okay. Some people potentially just need to eat a little better. But there remains then this other group of people that have more complex situations, and there just isn't a really good situation. There isn't just isn't good help out there, because the traditional alternatives are just oversimplistic. They're just too myopic. So I think what you're saying is that there's an opportunity here. One is, if you need help, there is help available, in the form of yourself and your coaches. But also, if you're interested in helping those people, you've put together the package of how do you So I suppose my question is, why is there so much disinformation out there, or just lack of information? Like, how did we get to this point where like we don't know how to fall asleep anymore, and the traditional medical industry is just not incentivized to fix it. Like, why is this information not out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. Thank you. On one hand, sometimes sleep situations that come to me are complex, and we have to use a variety of in-depth tools. Sometimes the answer for people is simple. And I know, sometimes it's really just coaching people in that which they know to be true and just do the simple and straightforward thing. So I don't mean to say that every client is uber complicated, but I think that the industry, so to say, has been mismanaged for so many years, more of a mindset than everything else. I find that, if you take a look at the establishment, let's say the medical world, it's kind of like an aircraft carrier. And it's kind of built over time, and it's this huge industry, and it kind of sails in a direction kind of slowly. And even if it's not, so to say, on par with course, there's nothing really causing it to challenge that, as well as to be able to turn. It takes like months just to kind of turn the steering wheel to get it to think differently. And I find that many, let's say, again, this is not a criticism of anybody, this is an observation. Let's say you have a sleep doctor. So many sleep doctors spend years studying the science of sleep, studying the neurotransmitters and the chemical process and how to read sleep reports and all of the neuropharmacology of all the sleeping pills and the studies and the newer sleeping pills. And they've kind of been trained to look at the world from a certain perspective, and they're really good at that. And that's how they've been, taught in their environment for the last decade or more to be able to look at this. And so when they come in, when a client comes in, they say, doc, my sleeping pill is not working. They've been clinically driven, say, well, okay, well, we're going to try a different sleeping pill. We're going to change doses. We're going to try a combination. And they're thinking in all of this neuropharmacology because they were never taught, how are we going to get the person off of sleeping pills for good? How are we going to combine conscious mind and subconscious mind? How are we going to deal with it from holistic standards? That's just not what they were prepared for. So I find that a lot of people have little bits of the truth, but to be able to put the whole thing together, I think it took, so to say, people that are looking at this from a fresh perspective to say, hey, maybe we could do this a little bit better and a lot better in terms of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, amazing. Thanks. I mean, yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
here. It's just like, yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, well, it has certainly been a pleasure. It was nice speaking with everyone. Like I said, I'm happy to continue the conversation. Feel free to reach out to me via email, LinkedIn, our website. Or like I said, we're happy to send out my work phone number. Feel free to text me, WhatsApp, and I would love to see how you can capitalize on the sleep industry as well.